let's call. I didn't ask you to talk. Okay, we'll call the August 31st, 2021 regular meeting of the Ridgway Planning Commission to order. Clerk, take the roll, please.
Okay, Commissioner Emerson,
Here.
Lisk,
Here.
Councilor Montague. Here. Commissioner Nelson. Councilor Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
And Chairperson Cameron.
Here. Thank you. The first application is a plat amendment. The location is Lydell Stanton Business Park, lots 3R and 2R. Those backwards, sorry. Block 2. The address is 180 Lydell Drive, zone general commercial GC. Applicant Tate Rogers, owner Eaton 2012 Irrevocable Family Trust. TJ.
Hey, good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. So yeah, as you mentioned, Chair, we have the first item here is an amendment to a plat. The plat is Lydell Stanton Business Park amended plat. The parcel was originally platted in 1984 as Lot 3 and Block 2. At that time, there were 23 original lots, an outlot, some right-of-way for Lydell Drive, and a couple other alleys. That original plat was included in your packet as attachment B to the staff report. Subsequently, in September of 2007, lots 2 and 3, which are what we're referring to this evening or looking at, went through a plat amendment process, and there was a little bit of discussion on this, but we're unable to identify exactly why it went through. But looking at what that plat did, it amended a shared lot line between the two lots that essentially allowed access easement and shifted the lot around for to become more conforming. That plat created lots 2R and 3R, and that plat was included as attachment C in your staff report. And what the applicant is asking for tonight is on that replat, there's a note, note 5, I believe it is. Yep. To remove the limitation of 0 residential dwelling units allowed on lot 3. The parcels are east of and adjacent to Lydell Drive and within the business park. It's east of the river. Lot 2R is not within the Uncompahgre River Overlay District. However, lot 3R is. So that's the lot to the south. Therefore, any future development will have to comply with that overlay district standards in addition to the zoning standards. The parcel is zoned general commercial and currently does allow a variety of residential uses, including multiple family, live, work, dwellings, group homes, and employee housing by right in that zone district, as well as townhomes, triplexes, and fourplexes as conditional uses. If this note were removed, all of those uses would be allowed pursuant to meeting the regular standards of the zoning district. As far as the master plan goes, this parcel is identified as mixed use business on the future land use map. And the primary uses included in that district or that classification are retail, professional office, commercial services, and restaurants. Supporting uses to those primary uses include high density residential, amongst others. Characteristics of the classification center around mixed use buildings and higher density residential uses. A little bit more boots on the ground, if you will, access is very viable on this property. Both lots, and again, maybe I should just back up and say that the note itself is applying to lot 3R, but because it's a plat of both 2R and 3R, I want to make sure that you're seeing and understanding a little bit more globally how this impacts both properties. So as mentioned, access is available on Lydell Drive for both of these. However, lot 2R utilizes an access easement that is established on that 2007 amended plat that crosses lot 3R. So at the time that lot 3R, the one to the south, develops, requiring a shared access point to minimize access points and to have organized safe ingress egress should be encouraged. Again, that's a site development issue, but something that we want to talk about, at least in form in understanding in the plat side and accesses. Utilities, there seems to be plenty of utilities there. Again, we don't know exactly what the use is going to be at the end of the day, what the proposed use is going to be, but there appears to be adequate utilities there to meet the needs, the future needs of any of the uses in this district. And again, that would be a site planning issue. Therefore, kind of through all of that analysis based on the application and the review of all this, if Planning Commission does choose to approve the amendment to the plat as requested and presented within the staff report, staff would recommend that the Planning Commission include the following conditions in the recommendation to Town Council. 1, a reproducible Mylar properly executed by all parties except town officials be submitted to the town within 30 days of approval of the amended plat by the Town Council. 2, an updated final plat with all information required by section 745C3 of the Ridgway Municipal Code be submitted to the town for review prior to recording of the plat amendment with the Ridgway County Clerk and Recorder's Office. 3, add a new note 7 stating any residential development on lot 3R shall pay the required development excise tax as described in chapter 4, section 4, development excise tax of the Ridgway Municipal Code as may be amended from time to time. 4, the owners of lot 2R shall sign the amended plat prior to recording of said plat amendment with the Ridgway County Clerk and Recorder's Office. And 5, any future development proposing 4 or more residential dwellings should provide affordable housing units consistent with the town's policy, guidelines, and regulations at the time of development. So that's kind of the quick and dirty. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
TJ, your recommendation on here as far as the notes. The U note on 4, the owners of lot 2R shall sign the amended plat prior to recording of said plat amendment with the Ridgway County Clerk and Recorder's Office. Has the owner of 2A agreed to sign it, or 2R?
Not to our knowledge. We haven't had conversations with them.
So we're proposing to amend the plat. It's an agreement between 2 property owners, and we're considering it without knowing if the other property owner is actually in agreement with the change.
If you're asking for confirmation from me, I would agree with that statement.
Okay, because you know that you think a change in use when residential is now restricted from that property, that change in use you don't consider to be a material change.
I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, but removing that, I think the answer is no. We don't see that as a material change, but it is a requirement to re-record the plat So it would require all current owners to sign the plat.
Anybody else have any questions?
Questions? Yeah. Does anyone know why that was originally put on the plat of the note to say no residential units on that lot?
So based on all of the, I'll take a first stab at this one, Preston, and if you want to add on, feel free. We tried to do some digging around as staff, and we're unable to find anything in the minutes in the record explicitly stating why. One of the reasons that we assumed was, which is why we have a recommendation for condition number 3 with the excise taxes, that it wasn't being counted towards excise tax. There's another element that associated with potentially parking issues that might be on Liddell, that we've heard from an application across the street. You know, and so there seems to be some history over here, but we weren't able to necessarily pinpoint it with the information that we had.
And so it says that 5 residential units are allowed on 2R. What's the difference in the sizes of property, and would we limit the number of residential units that were allowed, or would we just take away the 0?
So the request was pretty explicit to take away that limitation on lot 3R. If
That's not to say that we couldn't put a condition on it, on the request saying that we wanted to limit the number of units, right?
I think that that's a fair statement, yes.
And I will say in response to your question, Michelle, that 2R already has a development on it with a number of residential units. I think that's probably where that number
Speak
came
into
from.
your microphone, please.
Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. Jack can't hear.
No, we can't hear. So I was speaking to Michelle instead of the microphone. That 2R already has a development on it with at least 5 units. Maybe it is just 5 units instead of the restriction. But I'm guessing that's where that number comes from. And I was on the planning commission in 2007 when this came before us, and I unfortunately don't have any recollection of the details of why we put that plat note on there. So apologies.
The other part of my question was, is one lot larger than the other?
2R is larger, just
3R is larger.
look at like it. Yeah.
You know, John, I was also on the board at that time. And I think at that time we were trying to limit the number of
Units,
dwelling units,
right.
you know, but it was a live work, you know, the work area is on the ground floor and the living units are above. You know, I think practically speaking, the position of the town has changed over that time. So.
Well, thanks, Bill. I had that same thought, going over this, that, I mean, it's interesting because it plays into a comment that was made in the staff report that points out that over recent years, we've done a lot of approving of residential in our commercial zones and thereby reduced the amount of commercial property available for development. And that has some potential side effects might not want. I'm thinking that may have been part of what we were thinking at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you're right.
If there are no more questions for the staff, I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Please state your name and address. We might at the lectern.
No, we can use this.
Okay, all right.
Do we want the applicant say something first?
Oh, sure.
Usually we do.
Okay, all right. I'll close it. Go back. All right.
All right, Dave Rogers here. Appreciate your time and consideration. I think the plat amendment was a result of that building on 2R was built on the lot line, and they realized they had no ingress or egress. So they did an easement 10 foot on the lot 3 to let them get in and out of their lot. And then they traded that no buildable square on the back in exchange. And I don't know why the 0 residential was added to the plat at that time. But, you know, it seems overly restrictive. And like you said, I think times have changed. Residential it's hard to find around here, especially higher density, but whoever, and there's no plan, by the way, in the works. The property's under contract. The person under contract had envisioned a yoga studio and a couple of residential units that may or may not, you know, come to fruition. But in my, you know, I think my experience, whatever somebody proposes is going to be scrutinized heavily. And, you know, I think that you guys can have enough control to keep somebody from building a hotel or something there, you know. So I think it would be great. You could restrict the residential to 5. And it would be something similar possible as what's next door with retail, light industrial below, and affordable apartments above. So I hope you consider it, you know, if not flat out removing it, at least allowing a little bit of residential in there.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, now I'll reopen public comment. Once again, state your name and address, and we'll get a microphone over to the lectern. Anybody? Okay, we'll close public comment then. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question for the applicant on the square footage of the lot. Do we know?
Half an acre, so it's 22.
Good. Okay.
43 plus 2.
Right. Well,
All right.
Exactly. Thereabouts.
Yeah, thank you. Given the fact that we thought what was proposed across the street, which I believe was, do I remember correctly, was 10 units, was excessive. I think if the applicant was willing to limit it to 5, that might be a little bit more in line with density if we decide that residential is appropriate or in that area. So it's a plus in my estimate.
It also seems like an unlikely location for a luxury home. There would probably be some type of combination given the neighborhood. Just a thought.
Yeah. Hard to say.
It also seems unlikely as a place for a business, certainly for a retail business, being at that cul-de-sac or roundabout area. So.
I have a question for the applicant. Have you had any contact with the owner of the other lot?
No, but I can go outside and call him right now.
Well, point being, you know, we've.
Yeah, I just got this yesterday or day before, and no, I haven't contacted him. I didn't see that.
Okay.
I would have. My apologies. And literally, I can go outside and call him right now.
But you don't foresee an issue.
I don't foresee an issue. They gave them an easement, you know, when they had a problem. So the owner, this lot's been cooperative to those guys in the past. And I don't see any reason to to think that he would have a problem with that.
I asked you to put the still rent, you put some still rent, and then do you want Trevor to take you for
Got anything?
Lots of thoughts, but I'm not real sure.
Lean into the mic, would you?
Yeah, I don't have anything substantial on this, and I respect what TJ says about losing any commercial property, and so if we did do something there, I would like to see it go a little work, but if we approved it, then it's by right, it could be any of these things, so. If I understand that correctly.
Well, the suggestion was that, we could maintain some control by putting a limit on the number of units.
Understood.
Which would perhaps therefore make it, without saying, make it economically feasible to build some type of a commercial space. Because if you only allowed so many residential units, then you'd be kind of wasting the space of the property.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't want to be too restrictive, but like if they did something that they, like the one next door, that seems really acceptable. Still have your commercial space, plus you've added residential, which is a bonus. But I don't know that, I don't want to make it that restrictive. I think that can have other effects that we don't foresee.
I like the idea of limiting it to 5 units, just like the neighborhood ones. As a form of compromise.
I think that's fair.
So what would we limit to? What was the master plan guidance on?
I think what we were talking about going with the neighboring lot was limited to 5, so we would do the same. I don't know if we referred to the master plan on that.
I think that's consistent. Isn't that right, TJ?
Yeah, I was gonna say, the master plan allows up states between 12 and 18 dwelling units per acre. And so if you're at half an acre, you're at 6 to 9 units.
So 5 would be consistent with 2R and meet up with the master plan as well.
And the applicant wasn't opposed to that?
Sounds good to me. I would appreciate that.
Want me to make a motion? I'm just looking for that written. So I don't blow. There we go. I make a motion that we approve the amendment to the plat. Do I need to call out amendment for lot 3R, block 2?
This is a recommendation to council.
Recommendation that we recommend, I amend that we recommend that council approve the plat, the amendment to the plat for lot 3R, block 2, Lydell Stanton Business Park with the following conditions. Can I say as stated in the staff memo and read by TJ with the addition of?
Yes.
So I say that with the addition of number 6, that the residential units be limited to 5.
I'll second that.
If I might just clarify. Sorry, you know me. Just that what I'm gathering is what we'll do is make an amendment to note 5, limiting the number of residential units on lot 3R to 5 units.
Instead of the 0, it says not. Right?
I accept that clarification on my motion.
And I accept it.
Okay. Thank you.
So what you're saying is that you're gonna change the 4 to 5? Or
No, he's gonna,
Zero.
the staff report says that Platinum 5 would, you just remove the reference that it says 0 residential
Oh,
units.
okay.
And
I,
put that text back in and change the 0 to.
I was looking at condition 5. Okay. All right. We're all
I
clarified.
think we're all on the same money.
So many numbers.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please hold the commission?
Yes. So, Commissioner Ellison? Are you voting?
Thomas?
Perhaps he stepped away.
I'm here, and I say aye, but everything's gotten really choppy and broken up, so I couldn't hear you very well.
Sorry.
That's okay. Aye.
Got it. Commissioner Lisk,
Aye.
Counselor Montague,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Chairperson Kenwright.
Aye.
And just for clarity, Michelle Montague is a commissioner, not a counselor.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is a rezoning location River Park Ridgway Business Park Filing 1 Track D, address to be determined, zone light industrial 1 I1, applicant Alta Investments LLC, owner Glenn Pauls. TJ.
Yeah. All right. Just getting situated here. Here we go. So thanks. What we have here is, as you mentioned, a rezoning request to go from the current zoning of FD, future development, to MR, mixed residential. The subject property is located south of Railroad Street, which is outlot P3C of the River Park Ridgway Business Park, filing number 1 subdivision.
TJ, you're on the wrong end. We're on the end before that.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
We're on track D. We're not on.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Okay, my apologies. Pulled up the wrong file. Let's see.
Yeah, we're on the one before that.
Oops. Okay. Oh, just a second. It's kind of the same, but all right. My apologies. There we go. Okay. There we go. Got it. So this is property is to rezone track D, River Park, Ridgway Park, Business Park, filing 1 from L1 light industrial to MR mixed residential. The property is located east of River Drive, west of Forest Street, and north of Railroad Street. It is the, sorry, talked about that. Oh, goodness. Gosh, I'm sorry, having technical problems over here right now. All right, so the master plan calls this property out as a mixed use business on the future land use map. And again, the uses that are allowed are primarily retail stores, professional services, commercial services, and restaurants. Maximum density of 12 to 18 units per acre, and typically three stories tall. Although something to really point out on this particular lot, although the future land use map does identify this as a mixed use business parcel, the town does not have a mixed use business district. This mixed residential is. So I want to bring to your attention, similar to what we were just talking about, that by virtue of not having a zone district to meet that specific guidance of business focused, you are opening it up to potential, more potential for residential development. and again, potentially losing some of the commercial uses. So the property is currently vacant. The proposed use is unknown. The total acreage of the parcel is 1.71 acres. And prior to development, it is important to understand that setbacks would be allowed within the property. And we'd have to go through those proper processes. Access is, the site does not currently have any access or any defined access. Access could be accessed from a variety of roadways, including Railroad Street, River Park Drive, or North Cora. However, all access standards will have to be met upon the development of this property. So that's something that we would review at that time. Again, utilities are in the area, and the capacities would be determined based on the final capacities, and alignment would be determined on the final layout of the property. So with all of that, upon the review of the application against the applicable town standards, town staff recommends that the Town of Ridgway Planning Commission recommend the town council approve the request to rezone tract D, River Park Ridgway Business Park filing 1 from I1 light industrial 1 to mixed use residential, finding that it is in line with the comprehensive plan and the future goals. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I think the applicant is there to answer some questions as well.
TJ, this is Bill. I have a question
Mhm.
for you. What is there any part of that property that is within the 500-foot radius from the sewer lagoon that would affect the residential use of that that part of the property? Do we know?
I do not know that off the top of my head. It's not something that we actually looked at, but I suspect that it would potentially impact this, and it would be impacted at the time of building permit or site design.
John, do you remember?
Looking at the map, I don't, if there's any part of it that falls within 500 feet, it's pretty minimal.
Okay, all right. I seem to recall talking about this once before, maybe 10 plus years ago. And I seem to remember that at least part of the property, on the the southern tip of that property might be within. And I went back to look at notes and couldn't find an appropriate.
Well, if I remember correctly, there's two different designations. There's a 500-foot radius and there's a 1,000-foot radius. And there's some restrictions on both, I think.
Mhm.
I'm privy to the 500-foot one, and we did consult Joanne Fagan, the town engineer, on the application, but she didn't really broach the subject of the 500-foot piece. So that's a good question, Bill. So we'll have to follow up with Joanne to see if that's a point of reservation.
Okay, thank you.
Is the 500 feet from the property or from the lagoons themselves?
It's from the lagoons themselves, and I don't remember where that threshold is, if it's the center of the lagoon or if it's the boundary.
We don't have any plans for expansion of the lagoon. Lagoons.
Not on August 31st of 2029.
Very nuanced. Okay.
I have a question for staff and TJ in particular, I guess. Honestly, I think I was a little surprised that your staff report says, quote, upon review of application against the applicable town standards, staff recommends that the town council approve this request to rezone the tract. Given that previous discussion about loss of commercial and industrial property for future use, and
Yep.
also what you said about potential for some higher density residential there. Can you elaborate on your thinking
Sure.
behind, you're feeling like this was the right way to go?
Yeah, and I'll be completely honest that myself, Joanne, Fagan, Bo Nerlin, and Preston talked about this quite a bit, associated with both of these applications, this and the next rezoning. In this particular case, though, I think that it's a little bit different in that it's a mixed use zone district. So again, and that mixed use zone district is the one that makes sense with the future land use map, being a mixed use business. Also, this being a transitional parcel from single family or duplex homes to the north and west to the more industrial uses to the south and east, is an opportunity to create a transition in higher density residential. So I think that yes, and it was through these discussions, these three applications coming in at the same time, that this issue of, or this concern of, whoa, what's happening to all of our commercial land came up. Also, with that being said, this property being mixed use business also allows for, we believe that it was contemplated as a residential property to create that transition, or at least a mixed use type use on this property to be that transition piece in the comprehensive plan, as opposed to other parcels that were more in line with more straight commercial or office use. So, that help at all? Did I just confuse it?
No, that is helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that does make sense to me. I don't know, once again, I don't know that that's a particularly commercially viable area of town. Not, it is caught in between a lower density residential area and the light industrial, and it doesn't have a lot of commercial drive-by or potential in my estimation. But so an MR or a mixed use zoning sounds somewhat reasonable to me.
Okay.
All right. Would the applicant like to add anything to the application?
Yeah, this is Scott Strand. I work with Glenn Pauls and Alta Investments, the owner of this property. We find this location to be an excellent spot to transition from the commercial into the residential, and bringing in a higher density residential element next to a fourplex and other multifamily buildings seems to fit the scale very well. Keeps the commercial across Railroad Street. So other than San Miguel Power, of course, but that's kind of a low usage, and they don't exactly have people coming up to the front door very often looking in windows. So we appreciate you taking a look at this for us.
By the way, it is industrial, not commercial.
Yeah, and it is industrial also, which brings on quite a bit more uses than just retail type uses, right in the backyard of single family homes and multifamily homes. And like you said, it's not a very good spot for that. We have the big ditch right across the whole front of Railroad Street there. So it has a big setback for any viable type, industrial uses. So the accesses are challenging or are right in the backyard of homes.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will now open up for public comment. Once again, state your name and address.
Jack Petroselli, 540 Marion Overlook. I'm here representing Mr. Pauls. So we really feel like this is a more of a residential tract than an industrial tract. People have been calling it a commercial tract, but it's not a commercial tract, it's a light industrial. And we've owned the property for a long time. It's inside the urban growth boundary. It's where the master plan has asked for growth. It's really an infill tract. It has 2 paved streets on 2 borders, and soon we'll have 3 paved streets. So it's one would definitely consider it as an infield tract. We looked at developing this tract over the years and have talked about the different types of industrial uses and have talked to the neighbors, and everybody we talked to was really concerned about truck traffic or tractor trailer traffic coming up from Railroad onto Core and then going up onto Escalante Circle. And that seems to be a flaw in the way that this was really platted, because you would be linking industrial to residential by a city street. And the way that the industrial park is done now, it's pretty combined and pretty self-sustaining. And in my opinion, the industrial park is by far the most successful subdivision in Ridgway, creating dozens and dozens of jobs. So we feel like as the owners that this is really not an industrial tract. It would lend itself more closely to being a residential tract. And that's why we're doing it. I think the town and the council is seeing more and more pressure to turn commercial property into residential. And in my opinion, there is no residential available in Ridgway, and we're looking at zoning a couple of different pieces tonight for that reason. So we feel like the use of this as residential is far superior than use of industrial, has less impact on the neighborhood, and creates residential zoning that we need. So thank you for your time.
Anybody else?
Tom Heffernan, I live at 405 Kismet River Park, and I totally concur with what Jack said. And I think a lot of us also have concern about the density of the residential area, and also parking and access issues. I don't think any of us like the idea of access coming from the Rural Park Road, frankly. And so my bid is for low density residential and access from railroad. That's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Can I ask those of you on Zoom, can you hear the 2 people that spoke at the podium without the microphone? Are you able to hear what they had to say? Thomas, Bill? You guys there?
No.
Yeah,
Could you hear the last 2 guys at all?
I did. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I did have a question for Jack, if I could jump in there real quick.
That's not the way.
No, that was the discussion.
When it's a public hearing, you take public comment and then you have discussion after the fact. So we can't do it back and forth.
Okay, that's fine.
Kelly?
Nope.
I'm Kelly Day. I live just north of Track D in River Park. And, I think that the last time we discussed this right before Cora, the majority of people were not for the Cora Street being put through. So I just want to mention that because you're speaking like everybody was for that, but they weren't in our last discussion. I know that's a discussion for later on down, but just thinking about the amount of cars, if you're putting high density housing that are suddenly going to be going into a quiet cul-de-sac where all the children are playing, was the discussion last time. So I agree, access should be on Railroad where it's already cut in. And my concern is less with the zoning and more with the transition from the single family homes right to the north of there to high density housing. I know the developers probably want to maximize the houses they can get in there, but I'd like to see it done well and courteous to the neighbors who have lived there for a long time and enjoyed the single family housing that we have there just to the north of there. So I would be all for a transition zone going to the higher density housing if that's what's going to happen. Also, just, I don't know what the issue is there with the processing plant, the sewage processing plant. I don't know if they can put homes right next to that or not.
Thank you, Kelly. Good.
My name is Kuna Vollenweider. I own property on North Coral Street on the other side of Kelly Day. My biggest concern is that any kind of development on that parcel will increase the traffic on North Coral Street and into Escalante. So I was not part of the discussions about where the access should be from myself. I think it should be from Railroad Street because their traffic over there is so rampant and so fast, it would be hopeless to have a little bit of slowdown area in there. So it would be easy for people to go in and out of that property through an access on the railroad rather than having to go onto River Park Drive, which is already a busy residential street that funnels all the traffic from the River Park subdivision into Railroad Street. So a big concern is that doing construction will put an undue burden onto the neighborhood in the Escalante Circle neighborhood if we have all the traffic going through that North Coral Street. I mean, I'm not sure if it's safe or is there enough turning radius to actually come into the property from River Park Drive. I have not studied that, so thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tracy, 353 County Road 5, also Parkside Lot 14, A, B, and C. I think the zoning question, we definitely need more residential than industrial or commercial at this point. We don't have anyone to work in industrial and commercial, so we need residential. And I think River Park Drive is super busy. I agree that having a different access into this development would be a really good idea. But I'm all for residential on that lot. Thanks.
I'm going to say one thing, that part of it should be affordable housing, like 10% was the River Park.
Did you want to say something?
Jack Petroselli.
Jack, we had somebody else wanted to talk.
Oh, are you the first guy?
Okay.
It's all right.
It is within the sewer pond shadow by a few feet, and we were aware of that. And we're not at all married to the Cora location, so we're not an advocate of putting Cora through. That was a request from the town, so we're not married to that location. But that will be accomplished in the planning phase, so we'll address that later. But we're not a proponent of running Cora Street through Escalante unless the town allows it.
Tim Gessie, 401 Kismet Street, so I'm right across the street from this proposal. I concur with my neighbor, Tom Hefferman, that my biggest concern is density and parking. And the other thing is the height. The one thing, if you switch zoning to the mixed use, 3 stories kind of concerns me. Everything in our area is no more than 2 stories. And unfortunately, my neighbors here are in a single-story duplex and they had a 2-story triplex built right on top of them. So I kind of feel for the fourplex, that single story, that if they get 3 stories built right on top of them, they're just gonna be crowded in. They're gonna lose what we all appreciate here in Ridgway with our views. So I have no issues with the mixed use because it is really more residential, that area. I bought enjoying having all the industry around me, and we do need to keep in mind, if we take away any stuff that's zoned for industry, then what's going to happen if Ridgway grows and all of a sudden we want more industry. But this location really is set up, except for the concern with the sewer treatment. That's going to be expanded or updated, something to consider. But I have no issues with the mixed use, but please consider in the future, whatever is developed, that it isn't too tall and it isn't so dense that there's just not enough parking people that are parking on the streets, and we'll have issues with parking down the road too.
Thank you. We have anybody on Zoom?
No, no one with their hand raised, no.
Okay, all right. So I'm closing public comment.
Well, I would throw in that, well, I think it makes sense probably in the really big picture to change this to mixed use residential from I-1, all the reasons stated. We've heard a lot of conflicting input just now about access. A couple of people said they wanted to have access come off of Railroad Street. There's the big ditch there that's going to make it almost impossible, or at least very, very expensive to have to build a bridge over that. Jack just said he's not wedded to putting Core Street through, but if they don't put Core Street through, then all the traffic is going on the River Park. And you know, that there were several comments that nobody wanted that. You know, unfortunately, this is one of those classic things where as a little town like Ridgway starts to grow, we've got to deal with the ramifications of that growth. And the question becomes, what's the best use for this property? And I guess the one thing we have going for us is that if we proceed with the rezoning to mixed residential, still, as Jack said, that nothing will be actually planned until a specific proposal comes in. There's a PUD, there's a subdivision, and at that point there'll be lots of opportunity for input. But I just want everybody to know that I see a lot of conflicting thoughts about how to do this and how it's going to impact the existing neighborhood. And
I don't think it was conflicting.
we're done with the public comment. But,
So I just wanted to make sure the information wasn't misconstrued.
okay, well, I heard several comments that said that they didn't want access off of River Street. On River Park Drive. And that if we don't do Core Street, that's where the access has to be.
I thought everybody said railroad.
It can't be off the railroad because of the big ditch easement, and we can't have a back and forth at this point, I'm sorry, because it's a public hearing.
What if we used Cora, but it was gated where it is gated right now for fire access or that sort of thing, and it wasn't a through street?
Well, I think the point is not to probably get into the gory details right now, because we don't have an actual application for developing this parcel in front of us. It's more just, I'm just mentioning it so that all the people in the neighborhood understand that there are going to be some sticky issues to be dealt with at such time as it comes forward to be developed. Now, again, I see hands up. This is a public hearing. We have to follow the state law. We can open the public hearing back up if Doug wants to do that. But you know, public hearing was closed, so we can't just have a back and forth. It's not. It's a more formal process in that way. I apologize. We won't do that.
I have some comments.
Go ahead.
I don't have a comment. We just look.
I'm sorry.
No.
What is
map?
Oh, yeah.
That's all. Just look at the map. That's all I was asking.
Okay, sorry. That's the best map.
Yeah.
That we have in the packet anyway. Sorry about that.
In the comments that I heard, it was more of a concern about density and traffic, and I generally heard support for it being residential as opposed to light industrial, which
I agree.
is what it is now zoned. And I think that, like you said, access gets discussed at a later point, and putting in a culvert probably isn't going to make or break the project. I don't know about that, but I thought generally people liked residential there more than what it's currently zoned for. They just had concerns about how that was going to happen, and those concerns will be voiced later during the development process.
Can I just read the intent of the MR mixed residential code zone in the code? The intent says this district provides opportunities for a diverse mix of housing options at higher densities, as well as supporting services and other compatible uses that help meet the needs of area residents. Uses should be organized in a compact, pedestrian, and bicycle-friendly manner and be responsive to the scale and intensity of development in adjacent zoning districts. So it does foresee some density, but I think that's written in a way that hopefully through the actual application for a subdivision or PUD can be negotiated to deal with basically the transition from a single family homes that surround the lot to something that's likely to be more dense than that. We're not likely to see a lot of single family homes on here. And it's just more a matter of just kind of FYI than to, question it there. I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about in terms of the actual zoning change.
I think the point you made, both views, the idea is the zoning and all the other issues that are being discussed, those are the details that are going to depend on who's going to bring this forward. And that would be the time to discuss it. So I'm hearing that there's favorable attitude towards approving this as proposed.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I apologize if I wasn't clear about what I was saying. I was just trying to make sure everybody understood the kinds of issues that were going to be coming up at a later date, but none of them are unresolvable.
Ready for a motion? I move that we approve, recommend to town council to approve the rezoning of Track D, River Park Ridgeway Business Park Filing 1 from I1 Light Industrial to 1.
No, I don't know why there's the second one.
It's worded a little funny. 2 MR Mixed Residential.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second, and further discussion. Would the clerk please hold the commission?
Commissioner Emelson,
Aye.
Bliss,
Aye.
Montague,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Chairperson Kenwright.
Aye. Thank you.
There you go.
We'll see y'all back here for the next round.
We're not saying for this next one.
Okay, next application is also rezoning. The location River Park, Ridgway Business Park, filing 1 replat of blocks 2, 8, and Alley A, outlot PC/3-R2. Address to be determined, zone future development FD, applicant Ridgway Light Industrial LLC, owner Glenn Pauls. TJ.
All right, here we go. And I got the correct one pulled up this time. So what we have is again a rezoning from future development FD to MR mixed residential. The property is located south of Railroad Street in the business park, River Park Ridgeway Business Park filing 1 subdivision. The lot is currently vacant with no existing structures or improvements. 6 commercial businesses border the property to the east and north. Properties to the east and north are residential homes. The western portion of the property is zoned FD, and while a north-south sliver on the eastern portion of the property is zoned light industrial 1, L1. And so just to be clear, this is one property, one parcel, one lot with 2 zoning districts. The applicant is requesting to change the portion of the property that is currently zoned future development to mixed residential. The portion of the property that is currently zoned I1 is not being proposed to be changed at this time and will remain I1. So this parcel on the master plan or in the future land use map of the town master plan has 3 land use classifications on it. First, the furthest northwest corner of the parcel is identified as single family neighborhoods. The middle portion and bulk of the property is zoned mixed neighborhoods. And the furthest east strip, north-south strip on the eastern edge of the property is identified as employment. So in the staff report, we tried to give you, the commission, a table of the various uses allowed in each of those. And of course, as you're aware, right, these types of things aren't always black and white. This is a perfect gray area that we get to live in today. And so we have those 3 future land use classifications and trying to fit it into a zoning district. So the property is currently vacant, and this rezoning request does not include a development plan or intended uses of the property. The property, the entire property is about 18.5 acres. This includes the current FD portion and the I1 portion. And you'll see that one of the conditions or recommended conditions is that we get a better measurement and definition of what those areas are, because those will play into it down the road. So again, similar to the last request, there are a number of site development, site design issues that we identify in there associated with access, utilities, design standards, things of that nature that would come up with subsequent applications. This parcel, being 18.5 acres, is much more likely to have to go through a subsequent process, through either the subdivision process or a PUD process. So there will be ample opportunity in that regard to evaluate those future uses. So with all of that, upon the review of the application against applicable town standards, staff recommends that the town planning commission recommend the town council approve the request to rezone outlot P3C River Park Ridgway Business Park Filing 1 from FD future development to MR mixed use residential. Actually, I should change that. It should be from FD future development and I1 light industrial 1 to MR mixed residential and I1 light industrial 1 with the following conditions. The legal description of the proposed zone districts, including areas of each, shall be submitted to town staff prior to the town council approval of the rezoning request. And 2, the property shall be subdivided pursuant to section 745 of the Ridgway Municipal Code so that no parcel has any more than one zone district classification prior to or concurrently with any future development applications. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
I have a question.
Okay.
Michelle here, on the light industrial, I'm not clear on how wide that section is. It looks considerable in the first map, and then when we go to the next map, it looks very small, and you said kind of a sliver, so I was just wondering what the status is of that, and I guess it would just be accessed by that alley that's behind the existing light industrial. And where I'm going with this is, would it be worth expanding the light industrial area so it's actually usable if it isn't already in this approval process?
So, Michelle, the portion of light industrial that's part of this parcel is actually phase 2 that hasn't been fully approved yet. Well, it's actually, it's been approved to a certain point, and Mr. Pauls has come in a number of times to extend his, I believe it's his preliminary plat approval. And part of that finally getting to final plat and going to a place where it could be start to be sold and developed is the extension of Laura Street.
Okay, because I heard him apply for that extension and I didn't know what it was referring to. So that's exactly what it's referring to.
Yeah, that's Laura Street is key to this whole thing. And of course, it's complicated by the fact that south of the triangle portion here, if you can picture where Laura is actually half of the right of way still owned by the Wolves. So we only have 30 feet of right of way there.
So I wanted to point out that that's also where the Telluride Foundation's lot
Correct.
comes right up against that southern edge, and they're having that same issue with the
Correct.
narrow Laurel Street.
Correct.
So it's also goes into right up to where the triangle starts, same issue.
Well, it's the pink part, the Telluride Foundation.
Right, I
parcel
know
is-
that, but you're saying that the 30-foot width continues in that little narrow section of this property.
All the way up to where the triangle shoots off to the west.
And I still don't fully understand what happened there. I thought that I heard the town had an easement there and they gave it up. I realize that's history. No.
No, it's not, I mean, it's been platted, but it's not, we don't own it, so.
And is it fair to ask who owns the other side of the triangle?
That's Wolf. We can
It's all
by the other side, you mean all the rest of the orange and yellow there, yeah.
Yes,
That's the Wolf.
that's all Wolf.
Wolf. Title company.
So this is probably getting way out there, but what if they got that little corner at the top and then gave the right of way for the road to go through?
Well, I think a lot of your points are bring up a question I had about this. Well, two things. I think the thing you have to remember is that these colored areas are really, 30,000 foot guidance kind of thing. They're not hard and fast lines on the ground. They're just when we did our future land use analysis many years ago, the consultant created this color scheme, and it didn't necessarily jive with property lines, obviously. So I don't think the fact that there's that little corner of yellow is
I don't care the color of it. I'm just saying it would go with their property easily and straighten out a line and maybe give them something for getting that road that we need for Laura to go through.
them being the Wolves.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the kind of thing where this isn't the appropriate time to discuss that, right? There's an application for rezoning that is what's before us, and we start getting into the weeds of could we do this, could we trade that? My point was I would feel a whole lot more comfortable with this whole application in general if, as the second condition states in the staff report, that the property be subdivided. In other words, to me, to be clear, the proper time to do this rezoning is at the time of subdivision, so that we can clearly demarcate the industrial zone from the MR zone and actually do that at the same time. And that's usually the way it works. It has worked over the years, is that if a property needs to be rezoned from FD, it's done when the property is ready to be subdivided. So while I appreciate the applicant wanting to, try and get this cleaned up, I really think the appropriate time to do it is when they're ready to subdivide, and even if it's just to subdivide to complete the second phase of of industrial park and not necessarily develop a parcel, but at least create a lot line there, a demarcation that cleans up the issue that's has to come forward because of the second condition and stuff. Hopefully everybody understands that.
Yeah, John, Bill here. I agree with you. I think and I believe TJ even mentioned this in his analysis, that it's unusual to have two, one property that ends up with two zones. It would be much, I agree with John that it would be much cleaner to make whatever change we do one zone. So, yeah.
TJ, I've got a question. With the three colors that you've got delineated, there's an offset of the line going to the north of the gray, expands over. Is that the beautification easement that the applicant is referenced in his letter?
Frankly, I'm not sure. I see what you're referring to there. It seems a little bit odd, but it could be. It's hard to zoom in on that exactly and see, but I'm not sure exactly what that.
But if this is an easement, it's a recorded easement, it should be documented, it would seem to me.
Yes, and I believe that the map that you're looking at with the three colors, the yellow, orange, and gray, is the future land use map. So when it's just kind of identifying alignments, it would be shown on the a plat or a survey map of the property, which would be required for a future application, but not necessarily for the zoning.
But okay, I'm missing the tense then. The applicant's letter refers to this as already been something that's created.
Yeah, and it very well could be, but that doesn't necessarily affect the zoning of it. It would be an easement that would be shown on the property survey or the plat, and the town doesn't require that type of a documentation for a zoning request.
Okay.
So I think you're correct, but we haven't seen that proof of that in this application material.
Okay, thank you. Unless somebody else in commission has another question at this point for staff, I'm going to open this up for both the applicant to add to the presentation.
Ready?
Are you coming up as applicant this time? Okay.
You ready for me?
All right.
So a lot of the questions that the commission was asking themselves, we could answer in the presentation. I'm Jack Petroselli, 540 Marion Overlook. This piece of property is bordered by a one paved street, soon to be two paved streets. And the discussion about Lower Street is why we're making this application. We want to complete Lower Street, and we don't want to complete it without the zoning. John, you're concerned about having two zones in one piece of property. We already currently have two zones. On one piece of property, we have an FD and a light industrial. So we're just asking to change the FD. So this property is inside the urban growth boundary, and it's inside where the master plan considers they want growth, being close to town and not a remote suburban location. So we would like to zone this property because we want to complete Lower Street. And that might sound odd, but it's the truth. And we'd like to possibly relocate Lower Street. We have some proposals that we'll make during that process. We do not believe that we need to go through the subdivision process to zone this piece. It's currently two zones now on one track, and we would be willing to submit a legal description to define the tract before it made it to town council. So we feel that this is an ideal place for residential zoning because it's close to utilities, it's in between schools, it's on paved streets, it's not zoned general commercial, it's zoned FD, and it's near the bike path. It's where really commercial should be. So Michelle, on your questions on Laura Street currently goes halfway up here and halfway down here. So that's where the easement is. We could come in on a roundhouse and go out more that would complete that loop. This is the Telluride foundation. So depending on how they work out their issues with Laura Street, we either continue from them or not continue with them. So we would like to help them, obviously, for all the obvious reasons, but we don't need them to continue Laura Street. And one of our concerns, if we can drop this down again. So the connection, Laura Street is a very significant street, or will be a very significant street in the traffic pattern in Ridgway. Right now, Railroad Street is handling the bulk of the traffic to the high school until Parkside, until River Park. When Laura Street's completed, it's going to take a lot of that burden off. When Laura Street had a pedestrian blockage in it, it's changed the dynamics of that. So Laura Street currently comes off of the main part of town, and then comes into what we call North Core up here at Parkside, which is a real residential street. So we're not proposing this tonight, but we're sharing our thoughts. We'd like to move Laura Street over to Green Street. Connect it over there. That's not part of the proposal tonight, but again, we're sharing our thoughts and what would be a better use of that. And if we did that, it would cross over part of this property that we're asking to be rezoned. So to rezone this and plat this and do this, it costs dozens of thousands of dollars to meet the town's requirements. So we'd like to have the zoning in place before we spend the dozens of thousands of dollars to bring a plat in to subdivide this property. So that's why we're requesting the zoning. So is there any questions here for me while I'm up here?
Well, I would just point out that it's the appropriate time to do it is when you're actually looking to define what's going to happen on the ground.
We're not interested in subdividing, we're interested in rezoning.
Well, to me, this is the proper time to do that. And yes, you do now have a parcel that has 2 zones on it, and you're asking to rezone part of it. And to me, that triggers that the logical time to do that is when you're subdividing. So, I mean, especially if you're looking to redefine Laura Street's layout, that's, I'm not necessarily comfortable agreeing to a zoning change that is going to be maybe need to be changed again because of the change in the layout of Laura Street.
So what you're saying is a rezone triggers a subdivision?
Not necessarily, but that's the appropriate time to do it. I mean, you could do a very basic subdivision that just separated the triangle part of the parcel off from the light industrial part. At the same time, you're ready to talk about what Laura Street's going to look like, because if Laura Street's going to line up with Green Street, that should be where the zoning change happens, I think.
Well, we're going to propose something different than that, John. If we currently have 2 tracks, a 1-track zone for 2 pieces of property, we're requesting the future development be changed to the residential. If you want it to be subdivided, we're willing to propose a legal description of define the 2 tracks to make it, to clean it up. If that's not enough for you and wants to subdivide it, we would consider subdividing. We think that's an owner's request. We don't know where we're going to put Laura. We might want some residential on the other side of Laura. There's a green belt in there that has to be dealt with. There's a lot of issues.
All the more reason that that's when the rezoning should occur in my view. And that's just my opinion, Jack. Yeah. It's not,
I think the code says that we can rezone it.
I didn't say it didn't.
Any questions for me?
What is the beautification zone? Is that?
Well, the light industrial here, Russ has been putting on the plaque, and on the west side of the future Laura, which would be right through here, there's a plaque showing a berm and a beautification zone to insulate this or to buffer this from potential residential. So, if I remember correctly, the western side of Lower Street has a 25 or 30-foot wide berm that goes the length of it on the Paul's property. And that might be part of that preliminary plat that entitled this, entitled the industrial.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment at this point. Once again, state your name and address and come up to speak.
No one else is going to speak. Tim Betsy, 401 Kismet, and it's kind of easy not knowing what the proposal is. So I do appreciate your reservations and what you want, but at the same token, I do love what I just heard out of Jack talking about relocating Laura Street and tying it into Green Street. For me, I would really appreciate and love that because that will take the load off the railroad a little bit. And maybe it could end up going, I don't know what your ideas were, but me right away, I thought, well, you follow along and then tie in or whatever, come up through the middle there. But that would certainly make it where it's reducing a little bit of load in traffic where I live, which I'm at 401 right there. So I have no reservations on his initial proposal on what he's wanting to do, but I can understand that it's kind of scary not knowing you're changing the zoning and not knowing what you're changing it to. So I can go either way with that, but I can support with what he wants to do.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else? Jim?
Jim Nowak, 546 Hyde Street. I don't understand all the nuances on the zoning. You guys have a great time with that. What I do like is the rerouting of Laura because, I mean, as a former, having a student at the school, the load on railroad is unbelievable. And to be able to pull that out, whether it goes through Roundhouse, you know, Dan, what does Roundhouse go into?
Roundhouse goes into a pedestrian easement.
That ends.
Goes
By
in
the storage unit.
That's storage units. Yeah, yeah,
The other end, it goes into Lima.
yeah, or the way it goes through. Osborne. But anyways, I think it'd be great to have more access out there because as the school grows and we see everything growing here, the traffic is unbelievable coming out of any kind of game or any kind of event or getting to it. And, you know, long burden. So anyways, I would be in favor of that.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? Okay, going to close public comment.
I'd like to hear from TJ, what his thoughts are on what John is saying.
If I just might clarify, the questions about zoning is now the appropriate time to zone? Is that essentially the way where?
Yeah, just timing. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying that this, I mean, you guys obviously have done your work. The staff report says, you know, that if you define the legal descriptions of the parcels, that they can be rezoned. I get that. I'm just pointing out that in every other case, in all the years that I've been involved in town Ridgway, if we've been rezoning a parcel from future development, which is ground that's been kind of held in reserve for future development, that's what we call it that. It's at the time that that property is ready to be developed to some degree or another. And to do that before there's a plan on the table for that parcel just doesn't seem like the most logical way to do it. It sounds like Jack is worried that we might not approve the zoning when we see what's on the plat for what they're proposing. I don't think that fear is warranted if indeed that's his fear. I don't know. But you know, to me, it's just a matter of kind of logical progression of how you do things. And TJ, if you have other thoughts, I mean, I've read the staff report. I get what you guys suggest, and it's totally legal and it works. I just don't think it's ideal. That's all.
No, thank you. And yeah, I guess I'll throw a couple other thoughts out there that this again was a topic that staff discussed over and over again, trying to figure out if there were limits in the code for this, because frankly, it puts you, planning commission, and town council in a little bit of a difficult position, making an approval based on what might happen. And that is unfortunately the predicament that rezonings do put you in. It kind of opens the door. It's the theme of tonight, right? Kind of limiting the risk or the bad unintended consequences. So with that, I do think, as was mentioned, it's possible to rezone a parcel without going through any other process. However, I do think that it is well within the commission's purview to look at those elements, those future elements, and consider that in line with the comprehensive plan, the zoning standards, the utilities, the alignments, all of those other elements of development, and weigh all of those items and make a decision based on that. So again, we tried to provide you with the best facts that we could and some analysis and recommendation. But when we get into this discussion, it sure is within your purview to take into account additional items that have been brought up in this discussion. So I know I really didn't say too much explicitly, but I hope that helps.
I have another part of the question, which is future development is what it is now, FD.
Yes.
Isn't making it mixed residential putting more limits on the use of it?
No, because essentially,
go ahead. Sorry.
Essentially FD, the zone district, limits you to essentially what you're doing right now, single family, agricultural kind of stuff. And
35, right?
Mm-hmm. And so in order to do anything, it's basically a holding district, that in order to do anything development wise, you need to rezone it.
Okay, TJ, I have a question to that point, because I don't trust myself with math. I'm going to ask you if the parcel that we're being asked to rezone is approximately, you said 18 acres?
Correct, yep.
If we rezone it mixed residential, how many units could be potentially developed there?
Let's see here. I'm going to do some quick math planning on the dais, if you will. So 18 acres times 4, 5.
Requesting the rezone of 13 acres here.
Okay, so 13.
Yeah, that's
13, because the other part is the light industrial.
Yeah, that's gonna stay high. It wasn't clear in this.
So, and it's a difficult question to answer because it depends on the use, right? So there are different lot sizes and things, but based on the comp plan that allows 12 units, 12 units is 156 units. And 18, oh, wrong number. 13 times 18 is 234. So somewhere between 175 to 230 units potential. Now, again, that doesn't take into account all the other items that would have to be in there, rights of way, access, parking, things like that. But generally, yeah, you're looking at quite a bit density based on those elements.
That, I don't know, maybe it would be well, I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that concerns me because that is a substantial amount of growth for our town. So I'll just leave it at that. I think that might be something for the commission to discuss, though. So what do other people think about that?
Well, I mean, that just is one small example of why I'd rather see a proposal for even just a really sort of, again, 30,000 foot thought on what they'd like to do with it before we rezone it. But, you know, that's a lot of units, but you look at the shape of the parcel, that makes it really challenging to develop conventionally.
To that level. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So, but even the low end of that, even 100 units is a significant impact, so.
But approving it for mixed residential doesn't approve 100 units, does it?
No, he's just saying potentially what could be built on it if it was.
With approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I might, if it's all right, Chair, just chime in a little bit more that in this particular case, one of the things that staff did consider is that at 18 acres or 18 and a half acres, and the current Ridgway Municipal Code requirements, another public process would be required, either to subdivide the parcel through the subdivision process into smaller parcels, or if multiple units, multiple buildings are on one parcel through a PUD process. So there will be an opportunity through both of those as well. Again, just wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm still concerned that we haven't solved Laura. You can make Laura 4 lanes on that diagonal and tie it up to Green Street, but you still got the piece by the storage unit where we're restricted down. So I don't know that we're really going to be feeding all that traffic on Laura. It's going to go down to half a street.
I think we're all assuming, you know, without any guarantee, obviously, that at some point the rules would be willing to come to the table and dedicate the other half of that right away to us in return for some future development thing that they would like to do. I mean, that's what we've always assumed would happen at some point.
Mm-hmm. But how many years have we been talking about that?
Well,
Has anyone talked to them?
yeah, I mean, again, probably not the appropriate time to talk about it, but there's possibilities there. I mean, the biggest challenge is that Dana passed away last year, so their whole situation is, I assume, somewhat up in the air. But they've been much more supportive. Initially, they weren't interested in talking to us at all about things like this, planning or anything. But then at one point, Dan came in, and when we finished our recent land use update, he came in and told us he was totally amazed and impressed with our land use master plan, comprehensive plan update, and was very supportive of talking about working with us on stuff. But again, he passed away after that, so everything's up in the air. But you're right, Doug. That's a big wrench in the works.
But even having Roundhouse connect there is going to ease some of the burden. I mean, that's a kind of a weird route to have to go out to the high school.
No weirder than the.
I don't like driving through the light industrial because with parking on both sides of the street, it's super tight. Like if someone walks out in front of a parked car, that you don't have a lot of time to react there. I try to go railroad because it feels a lot safer, even though it's a longer distance for me to travel, because I don't like driving through that light industrial. It's way too tight.
That is true, Michelle. I had a person walk out in front of me. I was driving on Roundhouse this afternoon, and with parking on both sides, it is not a viable two-way street with parking on both sides.
And at least at Roundhouse, there's already a storage unit there, so there's not going to be more pull-ins right at that section.
Right. Yeah. So.
I like it. I don't have enough information about how processes should go, but in general, I'm in support of this.
Well, it seems like if we made the zoning change, we would still have an opportunity to control what actually happened in there.
Yeah.
As those things came forward. I understand John's point of view. It'd be nice to know, but I don't know that it's a requirement. And it'd be interesting to see exactly what they came forward with, but I don't see us rezoning this having a massive impact, at least, for this future development area. The light industrial state, light industrial, which we continue to do. So I don't see an issue with it. So,
Well, and if this moves forward, the light industrial becomes usable. Right now, it's just sitting there.
right, if they have some sort of.
Well, it's usable and it's been intended to come forward for completion for more than a decade now, probably, and been at its preliminary plat extended many, many times. So it's developable as is without doing anything else. It's just, as I said, I don't, it's not that I think this is inappropriate or, somehow shouldn't be allowed. It's just not ideal. And, basically by rezoning that FD parcel, that big triangle from FD to MR, we in one rubber stamp, we increase its value quite a bit. And still leave it totally up in the air as to what could happen. Now, we still have lots of control because it still has to come in for some sort of development approvals. But there are some uses by right. I mean, what's going to give us some control is that there's no streets or utilities or anything in there. Again, I'm not trying to, trip this up. I just am pointing out that historically it's been more straightforward to do it at time of subdivision. So I can support the concept as presented, but I just wish we were doing it a little differently.
Do we want to give an opportunity for any more public comment?
I don't know.
I am concerned, TJ, this whole thing, the problem is you're talking the 18 acres, and then there was a clarification that you added to your recommendation saying that the I-1 stays as I-1.
Correct.
And so I'm looking on a map here. You've identified replat of blocks 2, 8, and Alley A, and then outlot PC 3-R2. Where are blocks 2, 8, and Alley A?
Those are right here.
Those are in the industrial.
This is Alley A. These two blocks are right there.
Well, then I'm even more confused because I'm looking at the map that's in the packet and it says block 9, block 10, block 11. So what are we looking at?
That's a good point.
You might say what page you're looking at.
I'm looking
I
at
think
the
it's
one
the
just
black and white.
before the assessors.
It's the second to the last page in this stuff.
So identifies page 40.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying there.
Because
So-
8 is up on Railroad.
Yep, and so the application is for the rezoning of outlot P3C. That includes, I'll be honest that I'm not sure what block 11, I actually think block 11, block 10, and block 9 are parts of the preliminary plat that have not been finalized.
Correct. It's also part of this parcel.
But they are part of the, if you go down to the next page in the packet, that one triangular piece shows the entire parcel that is there this evening, that we're talking about this evening. So the
But we're not
graphic,
zoning now, are we?
No, but because it's one big parcel, it's the subject parcel to what we're talking about tonight.
correct.
But, okay,
That's
So-
why when he was very beginning of this item, he was reading the staff report, he corrected what it says there, which is it's rezoning a parcel that is part FD and part I1 to
Yep.
R and I1.
So the I1 isn't changing.
The I1 parcel is not changed, it still has to be referenced because it's part of this whole parcel.
Yes, that was both John's and my point. And TJ's originally, yes.
Yeah, so if Preston, you're able to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So what Jack is referring to, the 13 acres or 13.5 or whatever, is actually that's the outlot, the PC3 R2.
No, I believe that is only the approximately the FD portion of it.
Yeah,
Right.
That's what Doug was saying. And it's called outlot P3C.
So without rezoning the light industrial area, if we approve this tonight, the developable residential portion is approximately 13.5 acres. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
Now, just to be clear, that is why that's the condition of getting meets and bounds of the districts, that we have a much better idea of what that is.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get some clarification. So if we read that, if we make a motion, somebody's got to say what we're really, changing the zoning on. And if this is not 2 and 8,
Where are you seeing 2 and 8?
Maybe if we ask TJ to recommend a motion.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, Preston.
Yeah.
Preston, do you have the staff report able to pull up and show on the screen?
Yeah.
It's on the screen.
Page 1. So this is the subject parcel, and you can see that there are 2 colors. There's the green to the east and the beige to the west. So the total area in the red is approximately 18.5 acres. The parcel that is, the portion of that parcel that is beige is approximately 13 acres. But this entire parcel that is in red is what we're looking at this evening. That is the legal description of the parcel. And so the one parcel will have 2 zoning districts.
Block 8 is outside of that parcel. It's just north of, what, 687, something like that? Off that first map.
That's right. That's right.
And that was part of your concern, right? Block 8.
Yeah, block 8 is clearly not part of any of this.
Right.
And it's identified as this is part of the property, replat of block 2, 8, and Alley A. So we're not replatting,
We're not rezoning
it
that.
would be nice to have a copy of the plat here.
So I think Doug, what you're not understanding is that if you look at the agenda,
Yeah.
the location of this parcel is in River Park, Ridgway Business Filing 1, and the title of that is replat of blocks 2, 8, and Alley A, outlot BC3 R2. That's like where this parcel is. It's not that this whole thing is being rezoned. If you go further into, and like go to the end of the staff report, and you'll see that the actual planning commission hearing request just talks about outlot P3C being rezoned.
Right.
And then the 25-foot wide beautification easement and South Railroad Street. So I think your confusion is basically just in that the title of the action refers to the location as the whole piece that they own.
Right.
Okay. So it's not that that whole piece is being zoned, it's that this lot within that piece is being zoned. And I mean, this, again, this just kind of points out why I wish we were doing it differently. I have an additional question, TJ. So going back to your staff report and what under staff recommendation, condition 2 states the property should be subdivided pursuant to section 7-4-5 of Ridgway Municipal Code so that no parcel has any more than one zone district classification prior to or concurrently with any future development application. So am I to read that and start looking at that closer? And is it what that's saying is that this rezone doesn't actually become formal until there is a future development application?
No, that is not the intent. The intent would be that no further development applications would be accepted or reviewed until it's subdivided. And one of the reasons there is that they couldn't do a one building on the industrial park or in the industrial zone district and say it's allowed use in the industrial district, so we're going to do it. So we're just trying to make sure that that it gets cleaned up before anything future comes in.
So am I to understand then that they can't complete the second phase of the industrial park and start selling those properties until they do some sort of subdivision to cut off this triangular piece of the outlots P3C?
I would interpret that to be yes.
Yeah,
I think that would be a fair statement.
and you're okay with that, Jack?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Because that addresses a good portion of the concerns.
Say, Doug, I didn't hear the last part of that, so that is correct?
Yes.
You said it's correct, yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay, unless there's any other comments or questions, I will make a motion that the planning commission recommend to town council to approve the request to rezone outlot P3/C with the Park Ridgway Business Park Filing 1 from future development to MR mixed residential, and the balance of the parcel will remain I1 with the following conditions. 1, that the legal description of the proposed zone districts, including areas of each, should be submitted to town staff prior to town council approval of the rezoning request. And 2, that the property should be subdivided pursuant to section 7-4-5 of the Ridgway Municipal Code, so that no parcel has any more than one zone district classification prior to or concurrently with any future development application.
Second.
I'd second that.
Russ beats to it.
Russ already did. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please poll the commission?
Commissioner Amilson,
Aye.
Lisk,
Aye.
Montague,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Chairperson Kenwright.
Aye. Thank you.
You'll be proud of it. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes.
Yeah.
I move to approve the planning commission minutes of the regular meeting for July 27th, 2021.
Second.
Would the clerk please identify who wasn't there?
I wasn't there.
It's in the minutes.
It says, I've got it here in the minutes. Let's see.
Says Emerson and Mayor Clark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have a quorum. Okay. Probably ought to poll them.
Is anyone opposed to approving the minutes?
Because I wasn't here.
I think it stands.
Aye.
Do a roll call vote, Karen.
Okay, Commissioner Emerson? Was not.
I can't vote because
Yeah.
Have it. Commissioner Lisk,
Aye.
Montague.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer
Aye.
and Chairperson Kenrick.
Aye.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
I move to adjourn.
yeah. One thing before you do adjourn, as my plans stand at the moment, who knows with COVID, I will not be at the September meeting. I'll give you an update. I may be available through Zoom, but we'll see. It's an 8-hour time difference, so it'd be 1 a.m. to 3 or 4 a.m.
If they let you in.
It sounds fun.
That's right. Yeah, it's a big if, Doug. Thank you.
Okay.
I might not be here either. For that meeting.
I'll be here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
All right.
everybody.
Cheers.
Night.
Good night.
good night and thank